a lot of dairy companies in the US, particularly, and in Europe as well, we see that they're making dairy product, whey protein it's called. In order to get whey, you produce cheese. 30 years ago, we produced loads of cheese, and the whey was what we fed to the pigs. Because, like, who'd want to drink whey, like, you know? Now, we produce whey, and the cheese is what, we don't know what to do with this, but, you know, it still makes, it's the best thing to do with a litre of milk, or sorry, a pint of milk for the US audience.
Sure, thank you.
But if you have a pint of milk, you want to make money on it, you split it into cheese and whey. You get the whey, you turn it into WPI, which is high protein whey, and then you sell that to anyone making any food in the world because they want to put 20 grams or 30 grams or 40 grams of whey on their product because they can sell it for 25, 30% more. And that's where the market is at the moment. And right now in the US, I think there's maybe 4 or 5 absolutely massive cheese plants being built. So you're going to be swimming in cheese in the US.
Great.
It doesn't sound that bad.
Well, it's American cheese.
Oh. Welcome to another episode of the Odd Lots podcast. I'm Tracy Alloway.
And I'm Joe Weisenthal.
This is a very special live recording of the podcast. We were over in London for our first ever UK live show.
I love going to London. It was a little anxious, putting on a live show, selling tickets and stuff in London. You never really know who's going to show up in another city. But it was a great time. We had a great turnout. We had some great conversations. It was great to meet some of the fans and listeners there. I really loved it. And yeah, I really enjoyed the live episodes that we recorded.
Absolutely. And we had some great guests as well. And what you're about to listen to, 2 of the perfect guests, really, I think, for this topic. Obviously, commodities is still making all the headlines, really. So we decided to get 2 of our favorite commodities specialists. Both of them have been on the podcast before. We spoke with Javier Blas. He is, of course, our colleague over here at Bloomberg. He's a Bloomberg Opinion columnist, author of The World for Sale. And we also spoke with one of our former colleagues, Lorcan Roche Kelly, who not only is a business editor at the Irish Farmers Journal, but actually an erstwhile Irish farmer himself.
That's right. Formerly one of our colleagues. Just to note, of course, because things change all the time, this was recorded on May 7th at Wilton's Music Hall in London. Take a listen. So, Javier, the big question that we have to get out of the way, I'm sure it's on the minds of everyone in the room here, is Europe going to run out of jet fuel? And will there be, should people take that into account when planning their summer holidays to Spain or wherever else?
I think that you are making a great impersonation of my father, who is asking that question. And also when it's okay to refuel the car. I'm kind of halfway, it's okay now for gasoline and so on. I said, Dad, 7:30 in the morning, please. I mean, it all depends whether the Strait of Hormuz reopens or not and when, because it has to be a question of when. We are okay with jet fuel for the next few weeks. Until certainly the end of June. Then it gets significantly tighter because demand goes up quite a lot during the summer, but the market is working. It's every refinery in the planet is maximizing jet fuel production right now, and we are beginning to see that working, and more companies coming on the record saying that they are okay for the summer.
I mean, I will say that some of my friends from university, and Joe makes fun of me whenever I say uni friends, but my friends from uni were talking about changing their summer holidays to ferries and trains. So there's real life demand destruction happening already. You mentioned all of this depends on when the Strait actually reopens. Why don't we just ask you that basic question? When do you think the Strait will reopen?
This has been recorded now.
I mean, typically you have a deal when it's painful for everyone in the negotiation. And it's not really painful for either side, or not painful enough for either side to make the compromises needed. Iran is feeling the economic pain for sure. There's unemployment, there's inflation, but the regime can impose a lot of penuries over the population. And you know, the Ayatollahs don't face any imminent election. President Trump does face an election later this year, but the price of gasoline is going up. It's undeniable, $4.50 a gallon. It's more expensive, but it's still, if you look at the American economy, it's still performing well. Earnings are good. The S&P 500 is near a record high. It doesn't feel for the US that really they are the president is suffering a massive economic crisis that is going to force his hand to concede to Iran. So we are in a really kind of bad situation if you are hoping for a reopening that is painful, but not yet really painful enough that everyone is forced to compromise. And that's what I'm worried, that it's not getting painful enough. What I will almost want is that Iran was suffering a massive economic problem and that the president was facing $150 or higher, and then everyone has to agree. We are not there yet. So it may take longer.
So again, for those who don't know, Lorcan, not only a journalist, but actually long practicing farmer, someone who actually, in the biz. How are we doing on food here?
I suppose a lot of people look at this crisis right now and they say, oh, we're back in 2022 again. And I think we're in a completely different situation. And one of the big reasons we're in a different situation is the world's food supply 2025 into early 26 has been really strong. Like the world is, there is a lot of food. The world is drowning in wheat. It is swimming in milk. We have so much food out there. The one thing we're short of is beef. We know that US beef prices are going up, beef prices are going up around the world, but we've loads of chicken, loads of poultry. So there is loads of food out there. The real problem with having loads of food, and this is very like what Javier said, there's no pressure in food prices. We see some food prices go up driven by transport costs more than the cost of producing food. It's the cost of transporting the food from the farm to the factory to the shop that's driving up the price right now. What we need is, not what we need, but the problem's going to arise in 6 months and 12 months' time when the decisions being made today about do I plant that field of wheat or do I breed more cattle for next year? And farmers are going to say, no, we're not going to do that. If you look at the US at the moment, forecasts are we have the lowest wheat plantation in the US total acreage ever. This is going back to data in 1919. So there's a real squeeze on food, not now, but in 12 months and maybe this time next year, you'll be looking at a burger and the price of the bun is going to cost as much as the price of the meat is going to be. And that's kind of what we're looking at. And that's the real squeeze. But the pressure isn't there at the moment on
There's our headline. The price of the bun is as much as the price of the burger.
I have a farming question, a bit of a side
If this is about your Japanese knotweed, I have no answer to
Yeah, well, I need advice on that. But setting that aside, farmers are always complaining about one thing or another. They seem miserable. But when we talk to you, you seem okay.
That's because I stopped farming. At least my farming is somebody else. I gave it up as no, but farming's tough. I think one of the big problems we see at the moment, and this is kind of going back to my earlier point, the price the farmers are getting at the moment, they're looking at wheat, is very low. The price they're looking at for milk is very low. And they're saying, well, what decision am I going to make? I can't turn around and say, US farmers or Irish farmers, European farmers will go and say, we need more money from the government. And they might get a bailout from the government. If I'm a farmer in somewhere else, Sub-Saharan Africa or in East Asia, they're really going to struggle in the next 6 to 12 months because where's the bailout come from? Because they already are, I suppose, so subsidized with fertilizer and stuff like that.
Going back to the question, it all comes down to the Strait. So the war is over 2 months old right now. And I think, again, when we first started having conversations about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, people were talking about $200 barrel oil in fairly short order. And, it's not there yet. Explain this gap, how we have the nightmare scenario for the oil market. And it's obviously up a lot. But it's not at 200. It's still in the low. I don't know what it is right now. It's somewhere in the low hundreds, depending on what benchmark you're looking at.
It's about $100 a barrel for oil. Again, when I was listening recently, Fatih Birol, the head of the International Energy Agency, saying this crisis is worse than 1973, 79, and 2022 all put together. And then you look at the price of oil and I said, well, no, really. And then you look at the price of natural gas, the price of electricity, the price of coal, because we have this obsession with oil. First, I raise my hand. I am obsessed with the price.
It's your fault, Javier.
It is my fault. It's oil, crude oil, and olive oil. Those are my obsessions.
Just don't get them mixed up.
But, the energy wall is much larger than oil. And for many, right now, most of the energy that we are using is electricity. And electricity prices in Europe are, on average, about what they were on average 2025. So there is not a problem there. But you are right, people were expecting much higher prices. If you have asked me a year ago, Javier, we have 60 plus days of the Strait of Hormuz closed, and this is all what has happened, and the war and the missiles and so on, probably would have said, well, oil starts with a 2 handle, and we are at 200 and something. Why we are not there? Bypass pipelines have done a lot of work. we have used the strategic petroleum reserves of everywhere other than China. We are drawing down inventories at a very fast pace. And I do think that perhaps what I underestimated is the amount of demand destruction that we have seen already. Somehow, we have managed to reduce demand by probably about 5 million barrels a day. It's about 5% of the market, without really creating a lot of economic pain. And it's a bit unkind to put it this way, but for the global economy, for the stock market, it does matter where the demand destruction is happening. It's not the same that it happens, say, in Pakistan or Bangladesh, that it happens in Germany, as it was the case in 2022. So I think that those factors are, but we are creating a flow of supply using a stockpile.
Yeah.
That cannot go forever. That is, at some point, comes to an end, but it's lasting longer than I would have thought.
You know, you mentioned electricity prices not being as high as you might have expected, given everything that's going on. It's become a cliche, I think, to talk about Europe always facing one shock or another, or Europe being the loser from whatever the latest crisis is. I'm sorry to our Europe-based audience. But is there a difference between an oil shock versus an energy shock in Europe?
There is, because I think that in some ways, we have forgotten how bad 2022 was in terms of energy shock. Take electricity, and let's look at just the wholesale market, and let's use the German contract as an average of Europe. It went, the pre-2022 price, say that it was 50 to 75 euros per megawatt hour. That went to 1,000 euros per megawatt hour. Now it's around 80. So, not far away to really the normal level. Or let's just kind of take a step back, because I thought that, to me, the defining kind of picture of 2022 crisis, you cannot really picture electricity other than the pylons or a nuclear power reactor and so on. But to me, was the electricity bills that people will post on social media, or some small and medium enterprises will email to me. And I do remember a French baker sending me his corner shop in the outskirts of Paris. Typically, his electricity bill came around 700 to 800 euros a month, and it just went from that to about 7,000 euros a month.
Wow.
And we have not seen that, but electricity is what really makes the world tick. And particularly in the service industry, which is really what drives economic growth these days. And that's why the 2022 crisis was so destructive, particularly from an inflationary point of view, because a lot of businesses were receiving electricity bills that they were bankruptcy events. Either they increase prices and a lot, or they will be out of business. And we don't have that today. And that's the difference. Oil is very important because it permeates everywhere. As Lorcan was saying, if we have a food price in the next few months, it's going to be more because everything is more expensive to transport. So, your groceries go on a truck to the supermarket. They may be on a plastic tray on the supermarket, and that's going to be also more expensive. So inflation will permeate, but electricity is a big deal, and it doesn't really get the attention that it deserves.
By the way, we should mention that because we don't know exactly when this episode is going to come out on the feeds, that this is all occurring, what's the date? May 7th, 7/14 British summertime.
We had a request from someone specifically to say British summertime, so here it is.
Whoever made that request, that was for you.
What summer?
So, right. Lorcan, Javier mentioned, maybe one reason that oil isn't as high as it was because there are stockpiles.
Yep.
One of the episodes that we did sometime in early March that got a lot of people's attention was about fertilizer. I understand, because I heard from someone, that there is actually a fair amount of excess fertilizer right now that's cushioning the blow. Can you explain this to me?
In Europe particularly, there is a nice bit of fertilizer right now, and this is, This is such a Joe story.
Okay.
It's brilliant because it's got European environment.
Lorcan is the one who told me the story earlier, so I'm taking him up to tell the story. There may have been a production meeting outside. But yeah, so what we have in Europe, they brought in legislation a few years ago to support what's called the domestic fertilizer industry. European producers are very high cost producers, and one of their biggest costs is they have to buy carbon credits for the energy that they use, because it's hugely energy intensive to make fertilizer, as we all found out in 2022 with the gas crisis. So those carbon credits have to be bought by European. So it means that external producers outside of Europe having a competitive advantage because they don't have to buy carbon credits. So they brought in this piece of legislation that's called the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. Okay. Lovely acronym is CBAM, because it hits you really hard. But we knew the 1st of January 2026, this CBAM tax was coming in, and it was going to put up to 120 euros per tonne on urea coming in. Urea is nitrogen fertilizer. So like all the farmers in Europe said, well, we're going to buy fertilizer in November and December, when we'd never normally buy fertilizer. That is like the middle of winter, you're not going to spend money on fertilizer. It was a big boom in purchases in Europe of fertilizer in November and December of 2025.
Up 60 to 80%.
Wow.
Of what they normally would be. So when we came into January, February, March, like farmers had the fertilizer, or merchants had the fertilizer up till about May or June of this year, sitting in the yard. So much of the planting season has been taken care of. The UK, being outside the EU, didn't have CBAM. It has its own thing, but it's not coming into 1st January 2027. So the UK are a bit late to the party there, I'm very sorry to say. But not in most of Europe like that. So you see, look at the import numbers. December was the biggest number, like 60 or 80% higher than normally would be. So it's been a hugely beneficial tax in the very short term. In the long term now, once we get through those stocks, we'll see that imported fertilizer coming in, and it's going to be more price because CBAM will be there. But also, if we look at countries that rely on the Strait of Hormuz further nitrogen supply, they are now shopping in North Africa, Algeria, Morocco, and Egypt, where a lot of the European imports come from. And those countries, like India particularly, are putting huge contracts to buy that supply. So not only will there be CBAM on the imports, there will also be more expensive fertilizer as well. So again, as Javier said, and I'm saying, this is not a crisis that's going away. This is a crisis that's delayed. And that's what we're seeing all the way through it.
So we see stories now that, especially in the US, I guess maybe not so much here for reasons that you just outlined, but you see stories saying farmers can't buy all the fertilizer they want at the price they want.
Well, yes.
What does that actually mean?
Well, I suppose if we step back to, say, pre-2026, the fertilizer supply for particular fertilizer, like for nitrogen, was a bit tight. So we see prices were creeping up and go, okay, it's a bit tight. We'll get through the next year. We need to get some more supply online. The fact you take 30% of it out straight away means there's a fight on for what's there. And US farmers generally, like farming is an incredibly tight margin business. We're looking at net margins of like less than 1% generally year to year. So if you get prices to go up by 10%, you're kind of going, is it worth planting this year? So when the farmers are giving out, are complaining, as you say, like they're never happy, they have good reason not to be happy because they look.
We don't hold it against them.
No.
But they have good reason to be unhappy. So I look at the farmers in the US, they're saying they can't get the fertilizer they want at the price they want. Well, the price they want is free, and all of it is free now. But the price they have a cost benefit analysis built into their system, and like they can pay $450 for nitrogen, they can't pay $700 for nitrogen, and it's simple as that.
And it's as almost everything in finance is a spread.
Sure.
You have the price of corn, you have the price of fertilizer, and you need to look at the ratio. What is different in 2022 is that the fertilizer price increased a lot, but the price of corn also increased a lot. So you're a farmer, you were taking a hit on the cost, but you were benefiting from a high price. Fertilizers were more or less what Lorcan was describing, say for $400 to $800 a ton, but corn prices went from $4 to $8 a bushel. Yeah. This time, corn prices have barely moved. They're at $4.50 a bushel, and the price of fertilizer has gone through the roof. So that spread is effectively negative to the farmer. That's what, for American farmers, this crisis feels very different to 2022 because their cost is up, but their potential profit is just down.
And I think it's important just to bring back to my topic, the farmers again, because I love talking about farmers. The other products the farmers make, like dairy farmers are in real trouble because we've seen global milk supply up, I think it was 5% last year. We've seen some European countries up 7% so far this year as well. So the price of milk has gone below the price of production. In the beef side, we have huge beef prices, which are great. but farmers don't have cattle to sell. The reason the price has gone up so much because, particularly in the US, the cattle in the US is the lowest it's been in 75 years.
Actually, can you explain it? This is a source of a lot of controversy, the cattle specifically, because some people want to blame the processors or whatever. Give us your diagnosis of beef prices.
There are too few cattle and too much demand.
Okay. Classic.
Thank you, Lorcan, for that insight.
The lines on the chart.
Hard on red meat.
Yes. No, I think first of all, I don't want to ever defend one of the big four meat processors, but they are losing money hand over fist processing beef at the moment. We saw Tyson results were out there the other day. They lost $150 million in 3 months processing beef. So it's very hard to see how they're making a killing doing that, because clearly they're losing money. But the problem is there are not enough cattle to be killed. The retail price hasn't gone, so everyone's competing for the cattle that are there to go to slaughter. The retail price has moved a lot, but hasn't moved enough. And we're getting to a place now in a lot of markets where we're starting to see demand destruction happen. So I suppose the time between you're buying the animal and the animal goes to market, you're going to be caught a little bit in that. But also I think it's very important for people outside the industry to understand, if you kill a steer, you don't have one customer for that. You've got 25 different customers. Like the US is one of the largest importers of beef in the world and one of the world's largest exporters. So you go, how's that work? Because the US people love to eat minced or ground beef, you call it. That's what you eat, ground beef. The rest of the world likes steaks and stuff. So you're importing and exporting different bits of meat. So the steak business is at a different price to the ground meat business. So you have all different kind of things happening. But the fundamental problem is there are not enough cattle.
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand.
Javier, I want to segue to a big recent headline in the energy world, which is the UAE leaving OPEC. And it's been a habit on the podcast to describe relations between the UAE and Saudi Arabia as frenemies for many, many years. However, I think we might be dropping like the FR part fairly quickly. What does this all mean?
I mean, this is the biggest challenge that I think OPEC has faced. I mean, typically, it's said that the four most dangerous wars in global finances this time is different. I think that the three most dangerous wars in analyzing the oil market are OPEC is dead. And I will say that if it's not dead, it's really bleeding and bleeding badly. Many countries have left OPEC before. See if I can remember all of them. It was Indonesia, Qatar, Ecuador, and the UAE, and I'm missing one. I know that I'm missing one. I will come back to me. Angola. Sorry.
I was going to guess that. I was going to guess.
Sorry.
I wish I had said that.
But they were different for 2-3 important reasons. The UAE have the ambition to produce a lot more oil, and I have been very clear that they're about with a capacity of 4.5 million barrels a day. They want to go to 5 million barrels a day and potentially higher. They have the geological endowment to produce that extra oil, and they have also the money to back the dreams that they have on producing more with money to build the facilities. So they will produce a lot more oil. And I think that really brings a big challenge to Saudi Arabia. And if and when the Strait of Hormuz reopens, we can have a situation in which for a while there's going to be demand for the extra oil because global inventories are going to need to be replenished because a lot of countries are going to build larger strategic inventories. But at some point, you're going to see a race for market share. And if you have that, OPEC can, if we have a race for market share, then everyone wants to produce more oil, then the price of oil has to come down. OPEC is as strong as their members' ability to endure financial pain, but withholding barrels from the market. Barrels that they can produce, that they decide we are not going to put them on the market. And if you look through that lens, OPEC, the two most powerful members were Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Those were the members that they were withholding the most barrels from the market. And in a percentage basis, comparing how much spare capacity they were leaving aside to their production, even the UAE was taking more pain than the Saudis. That's why the UAE leaving is so important, and also because you could have others. I mean, if we do have elections in Venezuela at some point, and I hope that we see that towards the end of the year or the beginning of next year, and the opposition wins, the opposition has been historically very hostile to OPEC. So we can't have another, and Venezuela is another country that wants to produce more oil, that has the geological endowment to produce more oil. Question is, does Venezuela have either the money to do it themselves? Probably not. Can it put the financial incentives for big oil to go there? At the moment, they are not there, but over time, perhaps they are.
Speaking of big sort of policy, earthquakes, whatever, Tracy and I were here just about a year ago in London, right in the wake of Liberation Day. How are the farmers feeling about American trade policy these days?
Lorcan, you can't swear on this podcast.
Well,
we can bleep it out.
Yeah. No, I think American trade policy has been not as bad as American foreign exchange policy. I think that's like, if we look at, like, for European exports to the US, it's generally higher value stuff like wine, butter, stuff like that. We don't trade much meat with the US because you fill your meat full of hormones. We don't want that, and we don't want our nice healthy meat. So it's like this, butter and wine is the two things we export over, and they're higher end products. Like, if you're familiar with Kerrygold, not to mention a brand, we'll beep that out as well. But it's like 3 times the price of US butter, and it sells in US retail. Yeah. So that's and wine is French wine, French brandy is kind of the same. So it's the FX rate that's done more damage, I think, because it has led to uneven demand. Like, the US president is going to do something, so people will buy stock for 3 months. And then they'll have the stock, they'll burn the stock down, and then they'll buy 3 months of stock again. So it's kind of led to difference in trade flows. But market shares in general, it hasn't changed as much as the headlines suggest. But it has, the thing that's left the mark is the fact the dollar is 20% weaker than it was a year and a bit ago. And that's the bigger problem. I think one of the biggest changes we're seeing is more on the consumer side than the policy side. Like, we talk a lot about GLP-1. So people are eating a lot less. They're eating a lot less, and also eating a lot less in what we call QSRs, quick serve restaurants. People aren't buying pizza so much because pizza is a food. I'm done my drugs and what that. But what they are doing is they're tanking up on protein. Everything you see, I'm sure you've seen it advertised everywhere. Protein here, protein there. A lot of dairy companies in the US, particularly, and in Europe as well, we see that they're making dairy product, whey protein it's called. In order to get whey, you've produced cheese. 30 years ago, we produced loads of cheese, and the whey was what we fed to the pigs. Because, like, who'd want to drink whey? Like, so now we produce whey, and the cheese is what we don't know what to do with this, but it still makes. It's the best thing to do is a litre of milk, a pint of milk for the US audience.
Sure, thank you.
But if you have a pint of milk, you want to make money on it, you split it into cheese and whey. You get the whey, you turn it into WPI, which is high protein whey, and then you sell that to anyone making any food in the world because they want to put 20 grams or 30 grams or 40 grams of whey on their product because they can sell it for 25, 30% more. And that's where the market is at the moment. And right now in the US, I think there's maybe 4 or 5 absolutely massive cheese plants being built. So you're going to be swimming in cheese in the US.
Great. It doesn't sound that bad.
Well, it's American cheese. So, let's be clear on what you're swimming in.
Yeah.
But that is
the look on Javier's face right now at the thought of eating American cheese.
I mean,
it gets worse for Javier. It does get worse.
My question is how you guys are surviving on just Californian olive oil.
You never saw a knife in Sycamore, yeah. No, so we're going to see that in the next couple of years. There could be loads of cheese, loads of whey, lots of investment in that side of things. For the producers at the moment, they're trying to get their whey, so their milk turned into whey and cheese as quick as they can. So they start making harder cheeses. Everyone's making soft cheese now because you can turn soft cheese around the market very quickly. The price for cheese has collapsed and it's going to get lower, but you're not going to be able to get an aged cheese because no one's going to, at scale anyway, because no one's going to tie the capital up for 6 months or 12 months on this market where you look at markets falling down because everyone's going to be producing cheese. So if you want a nice aged 1 year, 2 year old cheese, buy them now because they're hard to get them in 2 years, 3 years time.
Oh, so this is actually a disaster.
Everyone's going to be making mozzarella and cream cheese and whatever they put in the spray cans in America is all the cheese you're going to be able to get.
Javier, just going back to oil for a second, away from the cheese and curds and whey. One thing that you keep hearing from the Trump administration is there's an expectation that the U.S. will be able to, manage its own supply, and that as prices go up, you're going to see that supply side response from the drillers, and we're going to be awash in oil. Is that playing out at all?
We are going to have a response from the drillers. I think that U.S. production in 2026 will be higher that we have expected 12 months ago. I think that we are beginning to see significant American companies talking about increasing production. I think that, $100 oil, if you were raising production at 80 or 85, certainly you are going to increase production more at 100. But we are talking about a couple of 100,000 barrels a day extra compared to a hole in the market of 10 million. It's not really going to move the needle, but I will expect to see U.S. production by the end of the year to be higher than I had expected.
I have a question for the Americans. What is the oil price, the gas price in America that actually causes political trouble? Like, is it $6, $8, $10 a barrel?
No,
where does that happen?
It's all relative.
Yeah. I don't know. I live in Manhattan. I'm an out of touch New Yorker, but four. That's when you really get it, I think. Anyway, Javier and Lorcan, thank you so much for coming and joining us at Odd Lots Live.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
That was our episode recorded live in London on May 7th at Wilton's Music Hall. I'm Tracy Alloway. You can follow me at Tracy Alloway.
And I'm Joe Weisenthal. You can follow me at The Stalwart. Follow our producers, Carmen Rodriguez at Carmen Armand, Dashiell Bennett at Dashbot, Cale Brooks at Cale Brooks, and Kevin Lozano at Kevin Lloyd Lozano.
And for more Odd Lots content, you can find our daily newsletter. That is over at bloomberg.com/oddlots.
And you can chat about all of these topics 24/7 in our Discord, discord.gg/oddlots.
And if you enjoyed this conversation, then please leave a comment or like the video, or better yet, subscribe.
Thanks for watching.